You played both of us, Mike. Her voice cracked between laughter and rage. That was the moment everything flipped. Two sisters, one lying man, and a revenge so public the whole of Richmond would whisper about it for weeks. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where are you watching from. United States, Canada, Malaysia, UK, Australia, Jamaica. Some men hide their sins behind pressed shirts and polite smiles. That's how people in Richmond, Virginia would describe Mike Lincoln, 38, handsome, broad-shouldered, and smooth-talking enough to make even the most guarded woman blush. By day, Mike was the model employee, a logistics manager at Burrow Freight and Distribution, reliable, punctual, the kind of man everyone trusted with the keys to the warehouse. But after hours, once he loosened his tie and stepped into the dim light of a Chesterfield bar, the other side of him emerged, the flirt, the heartbreaker, the sweet-talking player with the gold wristwatch and a smile that could melt concrete. He had rules, though, at least that's what he told himself. No married women, no drama, no strings. Still, the damage he left behind in that quiet suburban town could have filled a book of broken promises. Mike's mother, Gloria Lincoln, lived just a few miles away, raising his 9-year-old son, Jaden, while he focused on work. In truth, Mike just liked his freedom. Weekends were for dates, not bedtime stories. Jaden didn't complain. He loved Grandma and she never forgot a birthday or a basketball game. But sometimes, when Mike dropped by with a new pair of sneakers, Gloria would sigh. "You got time for gifts, Mike, but not for the boy wearing them." Mike would kiss her forehead, promise to do better, then drive off before guilt could catch up. At work, he was the gentleman everyone adored, always well-dressed, respectful to superiors, helpful to the interns. If there was an Employee of the Month award for charisma, Mike would have won it every time. So when Mr. Miller Burrow, the company's aging founder, announced his retirement after 40 years, Mike was there in the front row, clapping the loudest. But when Miller revealed that his twin daughters, Sara and Mara Burrow, would be taking over as joint CEOs, Mike felt something stir: excitement, curiosity, temptation. The twins were beautiful in different ways. Sara, the older by 2 minutes, had sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She carried herself like a woman who could turn a spreadsheet into poetry, confident, organized, calm. She wore engagement rings and authority like armor. Mara, on the other hand, was soft-spoken, emotional, and almost too trusting. She'd smile when she spoke, laugh with her whole face, and make anyone feel seen. Mike sat at his desk that morning, pretending to work while his mind ran wild. "Damn," he whispered under his breath, "Miller's daughters look like they walked out of a magazine." He told himself it was innocent admiration, nothing more. But by lunchtime, he'd already checked their social media, found out Sara was engaged to an architect named David, and Mara was, lucky him, single. "Target acquired," he muttered jokingly, grinning at his reflection in the monitor. He started small, polite greetings, casual compliments. When Mara passed by his desk with files, he'd say, "You make this office look like spring came early." She'd blush, brush him off, but the warmth lingered. He carried her coffee once. Another day, fixed her printer. Then, one Thursday evening, he stayed late to help her finalize a logistics plan. She laughed at his jokes, and when she thanked him, her hand brushed his. That's all it took, one spark. By the end of the month, their friendship had turned into late-night texts and secret glances. He called her sweetheart, she called him gentle. He told her stories about his hard life as a single dad, leaving out the parts that didn't make him look noble. Mara fell faster than she wanted to admit. To her, Mike wasn't like the loud, arrogant men she'd met. He was patient, attentive, protective, everything she thought she needed. So when he told her, "Let's keep this between us just until we're sure, company rules, you know," she agreed. She thought he was being careful. He was, in truth, just being calculated. Weeks passed. They started meeting outside the office, little dinners, walks around Belle Isle, a stolen weekend in Norfolk under the excuse of a work conference. Mara was in deep. Mike, on the other hand, was just proud of himself. He bragged silently, not to friends but to his own ego. He thought he could balance desire and dignity like two weights in his hands. But people notice, they always do. One afternoon, as they shared lunch behind the warehouse, an intern saw them laughing too freely. By the next day, whispers floated through the office like perfume. Mara didn't hear them, but Sara did. Sara didn't confront her sister, but she watched, carefully. That night, Mike stood on his balcony sipping bourbon, the Richmond skyline glowing in the distance. His phone buzzed, a message from Mara, "I miss you already." He smiled, replied with a heart emoji, and leaned back in his chair, unaware that the game he thought he controlled had already started controlling him. In the quiet hum of the Virginia night, Mike Lincoln believed he was untouchable. He didn't know that every sweet word he whispered, every lie he shaped like love, was another brick in the trap being built for him. The twins hadn't noticed yet, but fate had. And fate in Richmond always settles its debts. I poured my heart into this story because I believe real emotions still matter. My girlfriend laughed and said I'd never even reach 2,000 subscribers. She might be right, unless someone like you proves her wrong. Please hit subscribe, not for me alone, but for the stories that deserve to be heard. It started with a smile and a shared sandwich. Mara had brought lunch one afternoon, grilled turkey on sourdough, light mayo, nothing fancy. But Mike, pretending to forget his, joked about how the company only feeds printers, not people. She laughed and split her sandwich in half. That half became a habit. By the following week, Mike was showing up at her desk around noon, leaning casually against the partition, making small talk about everything but work. He learned her favorite flower was lavender, that she once painted for stress, and that she still called her dad every Sunday even though he was retired in Florida. He filed every detail away like ammunition. Mara was softer than most people in that office, the type who said thank you 3 times for a favor and meant it every time. She believed kindness deserved trust, and Mike took advantage of that belief like a man who'd studied her heart. He wasn't cruel about it, not yet. He wrapped his manipulation in gentleness, made it look like care. One morning he brought her lavender tea and said, "You looked tired yesterday, thought this might help." Her chest warmed at the gesture. He didn't even know that was her favorite tea, or so she thought. They began staying later after work. It always started as, "I'll help you finish that spreadsheet," but ended in quiet laughter, the soft hum of the office printer, and a growing electricity neither could ignore. By the end of the month, their connection had shifted from friendly to intimate, not physical yet, but emotionally tangled. Mara found herself thinking about Mike during morning meetings, smiling at his texts that said, "Hope your coffee tastes better than Monday." She told herself it was harmless, she was single, he was single, what could go wrong? Everything if you asked fate. Mike knew exactly what he was doing. He had perfected the art of timing, give her attention when she least expected it, back away when she started to lean too much, return with charm just when she began to doubt. It kept her guessing, wanting, and eventually depending. He told himself he liked her, that this was different from his usual flings, but deep down it wasn't love, it was sport. And when he learned that the company's HR policy forbade romantic relationships between staff and executive family, his grin widened. That was his favorite kind of challenge, a forbidden one. One Friday evening, the office was nearly empty except for the two of them. Rain tapped gently on the tall glass windows. Mara sat on the conference table, barefoot, her heels by the chair, flipping through invoices. Mike stood at the other end, pretending to work. She laughed about something small, a typo that turned shipment into sheepment. The laughter filled the room, soft but alive. Mike looked at her differently then, not as a colleague, not as a conquest, but as something fragile he wanted to control. "You ever think about taking a break from all this?" he asked. She tilted her head. "From work." "From pretending everything's under control," he said. Mara blinked, caught off guard by the weight in his tone. "You talk like someone who's been pretending for a while." He smiled. "Maybe I am." That night they left together, first time ever. They stopped at a diner off Hull Street, the kind that still served milkshakes in tin cups and played soft Motown on Fridays. They talked for hours. Mike told her about his rough past, about raising his son alone, about how women don't usually see past the surface. Mara reached across the table and touched his hand, her voice barely above a whisper. I see you. He looked down, smiled faintly. Inside, his ego purred. That line, I see you, sealed it. From that night, Mara was his. They started meeting outside work, pretending it was coincidence when it was. Sunday strolls by the James River, lunches that turned into dinners, and eventually, quiet nights at his apartment. When she first came over, Mike had made sure the place looked perfect: framed photos of Jaden, jazz vinyls stacked neatly, a candle burning low. The illusion of stability. Mara walked in and whispered, "You live like peace lives here." He smiled, "Only when you're here." They kissed for the first time that night, soft, hesitant, the kind of kiss that feels like a secret you shouldn't be keeping. By the next week, she was stopping by every few nights, bringing homemade soup, cleaning up his kitchen like she already belonged there. And Mike, he enjoyed every moment. But between those moments, when the house went quiet and his phone buzzed with texts from other women he hadn't deleted, he'd smile and shake his head. She's sweet, he'd think, too sweet. At work, Mara began glowing in ways people noticed. She wore brighter colors, hummed softly at her desk, smiled for no reason. Her sister Sara teased her once in the break room, "You're glowing like you found a secret." Mara blushed, hiding behind her mug. "Maybe I did." "Who is he?" Sara pressed playfully. Mara laughed it off, "You'll meet him when it's time." Sara rolled her eyes but smiled. She trusted her sister's judgment. Mike made sure that judgment stayed clouded. He told Mara that their relationship needed to stay private, for her protection, of course. He framed it as loyalty. "I don't want anyone thinking I'm taking advantage. It's better if no one knows, at least for now." And she agreed, because she believed him. Weeks turned into months. By late spring, they were practically living a secret life: dinners in dim restaurants, slow drives through Richmond at night, her laughter echoing in his car. She'd text him things like, "You make me feel safe," and he'd reply, "You make me feel seen." But behind those words, Mike was already getting restless. He'd conquered the challenge, the thrill was fading. And like every man who mistakes desire for destiny, he started looking at what was next, or rather, who was next. One afternoon, while Mara was away on a business trip to Chicago, Mike passed Sara's office. She was standing by the window, phone to her ear, frustration tightening her voice. Something about her fiancé missing dinner again. When she hung up, Mike leaned against the door frame. "Rough day." Sara looked up, exhaling, "Something like that." He offered a small smile. "If it makes you feel better, you're still the calmest person in the building." She laughed softly, "I doubt that." He shrugged, "Then I'll make it my mission to prove it." She shook her head, smiling as he walked away. And that was how it began again. Only this time he wasn't hunting for love, he was chasing ego. The morning Mara left for Chicago, the sky over Richmond was gray and sleepy. She kissed Mike goodbye in the parking lot, her hand lingering on his cheek like it was a promise. "Don't forget to eat," she whispered, smiling through tired eyes. He hugged her, nodding like a man who meant it. But as soon as her cab disappeared, Mike leaned against his car, exhaled, and unlocked his phone. There it was, Sara's number, saved under boss. He stared at it for a second, a smirk forming. Just conversation, he told himself, nothing wrong with conversation. That afternoon, he sent the first message. "Hey Ms. Burrow, just checking in on today's shipment report. Also, your presentation earlier, flawless." Sara responded minutes later, "Thank you Mike, appreciate it." He grinned, tapping again, "You make management look effortless. You sure you're not secretly running this whole city?" There was no reply for a while, then, "You're quite the charmer, aren't you?" He laughed quietly to himself, hooked. Sara was nothing like Mara. Where Mara spoke in soft tones and slow thoughts, Sara was precise, deliberate, and sharper with her emotions. But behind that composure was a woman holding together too many cracks, a fiancé who traveled too much, pressure from the board, and the heavy expectation to be twice as good as her father's men. Mike saw that weakness, and just like always, he slid into it like water finding its way through stone. He began dropping by her office more often. "Just checking if you need anything, boss," he'd say with that easy grin. Sometimes he brought her coffee, black, 2 sugars, sometimes a post-it note with a silly doodle and smile, "It's Friday." At first, Sara brushed it off as friendliness, but kindness has a way of feeling rare when you're lonely. One evening, she caught herself smiling at her phone after he texted, "You're too focused. I bet you even dream in spreadsheets." She laughed. She shouldn't have, but she did. Meanwhile, Mara called every night from Chicago. "Work been crazy," she'd say over hotel noise. "I miss you." Mike would answer sweetly, saying all the right things. "Miss you too, sweetheart, just keeping busy here." Then, the moment they hung up, he'd switch apps and text Sara, "Don't stay too late at work, you deserve rest." Two women, two hearts, one man's arrogance. He thought he was managing it perfectly. By Thursday, Sara and Mike's chats had grown more personal. He told her how lonely single parenting could be. She shared how hard it was keeping her relationship alive. They comforted each other through late-night messages that blurred the lines of friendship. When she once texted, "You're easy to talk to, Mike, you make things lighter," he replied without hesitation. "Maybe because I see you when no one else does." It was the same line he'd once told Mara. And just like Mara, Sara began to believe it. At the office, whispers started. A few coworkers noticed the way Mike lingered near the CEO's corner. One even joked, "Mike man, you planning to marry into the company or what?" He just laughed it off, but the comment made his stomach twist for the first time, not from guilt, from fear of being caught too early. He needed to slow down, but temptation doesn't stop when told. On Friday morning, Sara came in wearing a soft blue blazer. She looked stunning, powerful but calm. Mike noticed instantly. He leaned closer and whispered, "That color's unfair, Sara, you're making it impossible to focus." She rolled her eyes, smiling despite herself, "You're trouble." He grinned, "Only the kind that makes Mondays better." It was harmless flirting, she told herself, just energy, nothing serious, but even she didn't believe that anymore. That night, Mike was alone in his apartment. The TV flickered low, untouched dinner on the counter. His phone buzzed, 2 messages stacked on the screen. "Mara, good night, love, flight in the morning, can't wait to see you. Sara, you around, could use a drink and some honesty." For the first time, he hesitated. His reflection in the window looked tired, older, maybe even guilty, but the thrill outweighed the shame. He opened Sara's message and typed, "Always around for you." Saturday morning, he woke to sunlight and static guilt. Mara was coming home that afternoon. He told himself to end things with Sara before it got messy, but when she texted again, "Can we talk later, you make things easier," he couldn't resist. That was Mike's curse. He needed admiration like air. Sunday morning arrived like a movie about to turn tragic. Mara was back, glowing, filled with stories from Chicago. She texted him during breakfast with her sister. "Home, can't wait to see you later, red heart." He replied, "Can't wait either, sweetheart." At that exact moment, Sara looked down at her phone on the same table. A new message, "Hey hun, did you sleep well? Couldn't stop thinking about you all night." Mara's fork froze midair. Her eyes flicked from Sara's phone to Sara's face. "Who's that?" she asked lightly, though her chest already knew. Sara blinked, caught off guard. "No one, just a coworker checking in." Mara forced a smile, "Right." But inside, something started breaking. That text became a ghost between them for the rest of the day. Mara's mind spun, same name, same tone, same timing. Could it be him? No, he wouldn't. Would he? By nightfall, she couldn't hold it anymore. When they got home, she turned to Sara. "Be honest, who's Mike?" Sara hesitated. "Why?" "Because I'm dating a Mike," Mara said, her voice trembling. "And I really hope it's not the same one texting you like that." Sara's face drained of color. She grabbed her phone, opened the chat, and handed it over silently. Mara stared. The profile photo, his number, his words, her Mike. For a moment, the world felt like it stopped breathing. They both sat there, two sisters, same blood, same heartbreak, staring at the proof of his betrayal. No words, just silence. Then Sara whispered, "He played both of us." Mara's tears came hot and sudden. "How could I be so stupid?" Sara shook her head. "No, how could he?" By midnight, the twins weren't crying anymore. They were planning. Revenge wasn't born from anger that night, it was born from clarity. Mara wanted him to feel what they felt. Sara wanted the lesson to sting so deep he'd never forget it. So they made a pact: no police, no screaming, no chaos, just humiliation, the same weapon he'd used on Hearts for years. And as they drafted their plan, a small smile crept across Mara's face. "Let's see how Mike handles being exposed," she said softly. Sara poured wine into 2 glasses, handing one to her sister. "To truth," she whispered. "To karma," Mara replied. The glasses clinked. And that was the night Mike Lincoln's empire of lies began to crumble. If you've ever seen someone play too many hearts and think they'll never get caught, you already know what's coming next. And if you've made it this far into their story, you're part of this journey now. Don't just listen, be here when the truth hits hardest. Go on, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the moment karma knocks on Mike Lincoln's door. Because trust me, you'll want front row seats when everything he built comes crashing down. The next morning started quiet, too quiet. Sara and Mara sat at their dining table in the Burrow townhouse, spoons clinking lightly against ceramic bowls of oatmeal. The TV murmured in the background, reporting weather and traffic like nothing had happened. But between them the air was heavy. Sara's phone sat face down beside her mug, as if hiding from the tension. Mara kept glancing at it, then at her sister, then away again. Her hands trembled just enough to make the spoon rattle against the bowl. Finally Mara spoke, "So you're not gonna tell me who Mike is?" Sara exhaled slowly. "Mara, I told you last night." "No, you didn't tell me anything," Mara cut in, her voice cracked between anger and pain. "You lied." Sara looked up, eyes hardening. "You wouldn't understand." "Oh, I understand," Mara said quietly. "I just wish I didn't." They sat in silence again. The TV switched segments, now talking about Richmond's local economy, something about logistics companies expanding. It felt ironic, their family's company, the company that gave them everything, the same place this betrayal was born. Mara reached for Sara's phone. "Give it to me." "Mara, don't." "Give it to me." Sara hesitated, then pushed the phone across the table, her face turned away as if she couldn't bear to watch. Mara scrolled through the messages. There they were, every sweet word, every heart emoji, every lie. Her vision blurred as tears welled up, but she kept scrolling. The timestamps, the words, they overlapped with the nights she'd been texting him too. "Oh my God," Mara whispered, "the same nights he was telling me he loved me." Sara turned back toward her, guilt painted all over her face. "I didn't know, Mara, I swear I didn't know." Mara looked at her, really looked, and for a moment the anger softened. "I believe you," she said finally, "but now we both know." By evening, the twins were no longer sisters mourning a heartbreak, they were partners in a quiet storm. They sat side by side on the couch, laptop open between them, reading through Mike's old messages like detectives piecing together evidence. "Look at this one," Sara said, scrolling. "He told me this exact thing word for word." Mara leaned closer, reading the text aloud. "You make the world slow down when you walk into a room." She laughed bitterly. "That's what he told me on Valentine's Day." Sara shook her head. "He didn't even bother changing the lines." Mara smirked through the ache. Classic player laziness. They spent hours that night comparing notes, texts, call logs, the dates he claimed to be working late. The realization was worse than the betrayal itself. He hadn't just played them, he'd played them in sync like a conductor running 2 melodies at once. Sara leaned back, exhausted. "You know what the worst part is?" Mara glanced up. "What?" Sara's voice hardened. "He thinks he won." That's when Mara's expression changed. A calmness came over her, something sharp and determined. "Then let's show him what losing feels like." Sara stared, uncertain. "You're talking revenge?" Mara nodded slowly. "No, I'm talking justice." They began with research. Sara called an old college friend, Tanya, who worked in marketing. Tanya knew people, bloggers, influencers, even small local news contacts who loved a scandal. "Can you keep a secret?" Sara asked over the phone. Tanya laughed. "Not if it's juicy." Sara hesitated, then said, "It's about one of our employees, we want the truth to come out, publicly." There was a pause, then Tanya's voice lowered. "I'm listening." Meanwhile, Mara reached out to the women at the office, the same ones Mike had charmed or flirted with over the years. She invited them to a quiet after-hours ladies' meeting in the conference room. When they arrived, the room buzzed with curiosity. Mara stood at the front, her voice steady but her eyes fierce. "You all know Mike Lincoln," she began. "Some of you might have been his friend, some his target. My sister and I learned something about him, something ugly." The room went silent. She told them everything, the lies, the manipulation, the way he used charm like a weapon. By the end, several women were nodding, some even sharing their own stories. One whispered, "He used to text me at night too, said I was different." Mara smiled sadly, "He told us all that." By the time Sara arrived from her meeting with Tanya, the room was united. 20 women, one plan. Sara took the lead, explaining the setup in a low, deliberate tone. "He's arrogant, predictable, he thinks he's in control, so we'll let him think that. We'll use what he loves most, secrecy, ego, and women's trust, to expose him." Mara added, "He'll think he's walking into another romantic night, but this time the only thing waiting for him is the truth." Over the next few days, they staged it carefully. Sara started texting him again slowly, pretending she hadn't found out. Her messages were soft, apologetic. She wrote things like, "I miss our talks and can we see each other soon?" Mike, relieved, fell right back into the trap. "Of course, sweetheart, I've missed you too," he replied, not knowing Mara was right there beside her, watching every word. Each text made them stronger, not weaker. Each lie he told gave them another piece of control. By Thursday, the plan was set. Sara sent the final message, "Let's meet Saturday night at the Marriott on Broad Street, room 304, just you and me." Mara smiled, "Perfect." Tanya and the bloggers confirmed they'd be nearby, cameras ready, waiting for the call. The female employees would be in the next room, silent witnesses. Sara rehearsed her lines, not out of vanity but purpose. "He'll think he's getting what he wants," she said, "but he's walking straight into his own ending." Mara looked at her sister, once broken, now blazing with confidence, and felt proud. "For every woman he's ever fooled," Mara whispered. Sara nodded, "For every woman who thought it was her fault." Saturday came fast. The twins spent the afternoon at a salon, not for beauty but for armor. New clothes, fresh hair, subtle perfume. If they were going to end this, they'd do it looking untouchable. When Sara's phone buzzed that evening with a text from Mike, "On my way, been waiting for this night," she felt nothing but calm. Mara glanced at the clock, showtime. Sara smiled faintly, "Let's give him the performance he deserves." As the sun sank over the city, Richmond's lights began to glow, unaware of the storm about to break inside that quiet hotel room. And for the first time since their father retired, the Burrow twins weren't just running a company, they were reclaiming their power. The hunter had become the prey. And by midnight, Mike Lincoln's final act would begin. Saturday night in Richmond always had a rhythm, traffic humming through Broad Street, laughter spilling from rooftop bars, and the warm glow of hotel windows against the night. Inside one of those rooms, room 304 at the Marriott, Sara Burrow stood in front of a full-length mirror, her heart steady, her reflection calm. She wasn't nervous anymore, she wasn't even angry. She just wanted it to end, not for closure but for justice. Behind the adjoining wall in room 305, Mara and a small circle of women waited quietly. Some of them were colleagues. Some victims of Mike's smooth lies. And all of them had their phones ready, cameras poised. The trap was set. Mike Lincoln arrived 15 minutes late, freshly shaved, cologne thick in the air, a confident smile cutting through his face like it belonged there. He wore a black shirt, unbuttoned just enough to show the chain around his neck, and carried the casual swagger of a man who thought the night was his. As he walked through the lobby, he winked at his reflection in the glass door. "Tonight," he muttered, "I make history." He didn't know how right he was, just not in the way he imagined. Sara opened the door before he could knock twice. Her perfume drifted out like a quiet promise. "Hey," she said softly. Mike grinned, "You look incredible." She smiled, stepping aside. "You too, been a long week, huh?" "Too long," he said, tossing his jacket on the chair, "but I've been thinking about this all day." Sara chuckled, moving closer, playing her role perfectly. "Maybe we should slow down, you've had a busy day, why don't you take a shower first, get comfortable?" Mike tilted his head, half surprised. "You sure?" She nodded, positive. He didn't question it. Men like him rarely did when they thought they were winning. He slipped off his shirt, flexing in the mirror as if admiring his own reflection. Sara turned away to hide her disgust. By the time he stepped into the bathroom, steam filled the air. Water rushed, the sound of the shower muffled the outside world. Sarah's fingers trembled slightly as she texted one word to her sister. Now. The door connecting room 304 to room 305 opened silently. Mara stepped through first, followed by Tanya and several other women from the office. Phones out, record buttons glowing red. They moved like ghosts, calm, deliberate, ready. Sara gathered Mike's clothes, shirt, pants, shoes, wallet, and stuffed them into a black bag. Mara whispered, "Ready." Sara nodded, let him finish his act. A moment later, the shower stopped. Mike's voice carried from behind the door, "You better not start without me." The women exchanged glances, holding in their laughter. Then the door opened, steam billowing out. Mike stepped out wearing nothing but gray shorts and a grin, the kind that belonged to a man too sure of himself. "Miss me," he said, looking up. Then he froze. The room was full. Sara stood by the bed, arms crossed, Mara beside her. Behind them, 6 women stood with phones raised, recording. Mike blinked, confusion flashing into horror. "What the hell?" "Welcome to your reality check," Sara said coolly. He looked from one face to another. "What is this, some kind of joke?" Mara's voice trembled but her eyes burned steady. "No joke, Mike, this is the truth, and tonight the truth has a camera." He took a step forward. "Turn those off, you can't do this." Sara smirked. "You didn't ask for consent when you played us, remember?" Laughter rippled through the room. The sound cut him like glass. "Give me my clothes," he barked, his voice breaking now. Sara shook her head. "You don't need them, you stripped enough people of dignity, we're just returning the favor." Mara stepped closer, holding up her phone. "Smile, Mike, you're about to be famous." "Don't do this," he pleaded, voice cracking. "Come on, Mara, I care about you." She flinched. "You cared about control, not people." Tanya opened the door to the hallway. "Time up." Before Mike could react, Sara motioned toward him. "Out." They pushed him gently but firmly toward the door. Mike's voice rose, desperate now. "You're crazy, you're ruining me." Mara stopped at the threshold, her voice was calm, almost sad. "You already did that yourself." And with that, they pushed him out. The door clicked behind him. Mike stood in the hotel hallway, half naked, trembling, humiliated, as the sound of muffled laughter and camera flashes echoed behind the door. By morning it was everywhere. Anonymous blogs, gossip sites, even a few news pages. Local logistics manager exposed for manipulating female bosses. Photos of him shirtless and ashamed, plastered online like digital justice. The company inbox flooded with messages. The board called an emergency meeting. And by Monday, Mike Lincoln's resignation email hit everyone's screen. No one was surprised. He moved out of Richmond 2 weeks later, quiet and bitter. Some said he went to North Carolina, others said Atlanta. No one cared enough to find out. Mara never saw him again, Sara didn't want to. But on some nights when they passed the old hotel, a ghost of memory would flicker, not of pain but of triumph. Because in that moment, they hadn't just exposed a man. They reclaimed every piece of themselves he tried to take. A few months later, the Burrow twins sat in the office together, sunlight spilling across their desks. Business was better than ever. The women in the company stood taller now, more confident, more protective of each other. Sara looked at her sister, smiling. "Do you ever regret it?" Mara thought for a moment. "Not the revenge, the time we wasted believing someone like him could love the way we did." Sara nodded. "Yeah, but maybe we had to learn it that way so we'd never fall for that kind of charm again." And that was the lesson. That love without honesty is manipulation. That charm without respect is poison. And that when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Mike Lincoln thought he could outsmart karma, but karma had 2 names, 2 hearts, and 1 plan that ended his game for good. If you're still here, maybe part of you has known a Mike too, someone who smiled with lies and thought they'd never get caught. Maybe you've forgiven someone who didn't deserve it. Maybe you've been the one who learned the hard way that silence isn't peace, it's the pause before truth speaks. So stay with us. Don't just hear stories like this, witness them. Because every story like Mike's reminds us that the masks people wear always fall off in the end. Go ahead, subscribe to this channel, not for the drama, but for the reminder that justice doesn't need noise, sometimes it just needs a camera and the courage to hit record.